I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought.
I can tell you that 7 years after Freddie Gray, that was 2015, spring, April, May. This is 2022. Communities like Sandtown, all we saw then and now in terms of investment was a renovated Western District Police Station and a new funeral home. That's what West Baltimore got. A new police station and a new funeral home. What kind of optics are they? Was Freddie Gray any different than 1968 Baltimore riots? Dr. King's passing, killing, murder? Is it the same?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think, well, first of all, people who are being violent and burning, that's, you know, all that's the same. But the point is what was the cause and what were they attempting to register?
I always fight just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns. They deserve it now. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown. I swear to God they don't let me down. I always fight just to wear the crown. I won't stop at these fucking
Good morning. One of the most esteemed universities here in the state of Maryland and in the city of Baltimore is Morgan State. As a matter of fact, I have a little academic experience myself at Morgan State University, located in Northeast Baltimore. I think it's that beautiful Frederick Douglass statue that always tends to stand out in my mind. That and the fact that Morgan State University is the home to WEAA, and followers of this page know that we do a broadcast every Thursday night at 7 p.m. on WEAA with the one and only Mike Nice. But to join us right now to talk about the latest in terms of the future of Morgan State University, we have Dr. John Wesley Sealey. Good morning, Dr. Sealey. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
First and foremost, I want to thank the good Lord. But if you know Nicole, then we better thank her secondly.
Okay, all right. I do know Nicole.
I love the Lord, but I don't want no trouble with Nicole.
Okay, all right. Well, we were both in the same boat in that respect.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
So tell us about yourself.
Oh, it's hard to talk about myself. Well, I'm originally from North Carolina, and a little small town, Rose Hill, North Carolina, which is about 30 miles from Wilmington, North Carolina. Went to undergrad at North Carolina Central University, which is a HBCU, which is where I developed my love for HBCU. Left there, went to Michigan State University to get a medical degree. Left there and did my first residency, then went to Union Springs, Alabama to practice family medicine. I was there for a couple of years, and then I came back to do general surgery and cardiothoracic surgery in Detroit. I practiced in Detroit for about 20 years. Then I decided to go into academics. I was the designated institutional officer for Authority Health, which is a residency program in the inner city. We had the largest teaching health center program in the country. left there and decided that I wanted to be a dean. Went to started to pursue that role. Went to as an associate dean in Minnesota and an associate dean in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And from there, I came to the lovely city of Baltimore, and that's where I am now.
That's a lot of Black history that you covered there. I mean, all of these places play a role. You know, we often talk about on this show, Black Wall Street. This is my second book, I Am Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And I look at how those beautiful Black people got to Oklahoma in the first place. And it wasn't like they just got on a plane, caught a plane to Oklahoma. There were a lot of stories. There were a lot of people who sacrificed. I mean, you mentioned North Carolina. You can't talk about Black Wall Street and not mention North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company.
Correct.
In Durham. Correct. That was one of the 3 official Black Wall Streets. And then you end up out in the Midwest.
Well,
was this some type of pilgrimage, an academic pilgrimage, a journey?
Let's say this. Let me kind of like chronicle that for you. North Carolina. I remember North Carolina Mutual because my mother had a policy with North Carolina Mutual. I remember the Wilmington 10 because I was there during that period of time. So there's a lot of, and I can remember in Durham when I was at North Carolina Central, we having some issues with how they treated us in the city. So that's the first part of the history. So when I was in North Carolina, I went to my family doctor's office and I went into this room, his waiting room, and it said color and white. And I, not quite naturally, it's a segregated environment. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor and all the patients can come into the same room and it won't be this problem. And that was where I actually bit the apple of medicine at that point. Not because I liked doing anything, but just because I saw the need and I decided I was going to be there because originally I thought that I was going to be a preacher. From there, I decided to go to, as I went through North Carolina Central, that's where I saw my first African-American physician when I was a freshman there. I decided to go to medical school, and I just said if I was going to go to medical school, I was going to come back to my little hometown and be the doctor there or some town like that. When I got through with my training, I went to Union Springs, Alabama, which is 20 miles from Tuskegee. So that whole Tuskegee experiment, I took care of some of those older patients as they had lived through that experiment and they were now they were 80, 70 and 80 years old.
And these are people who live with syphilis.
Yes, that's correct. And
how do you live with syphilis?
Well, they did not necessarily live with syphilis because eventually they were treated. And eventually they had tertiary syphilis and they were treated and you had all of the symptoms and signs of tertiary syphilis. And the government then, after that, did give them insurance and they could do anything they wanted to. One of the strangest cases I ever seen was a lady that came in. She was really mentally unstable. We did the test for syphilis. She was positive. She had tertiary syphilis. We treated her and she was fine. So it was even in 1976, 77, 78, it was still very prevalent there in the Tuskegee area. And I was glad to be able to do that. So
Doc, just for clarity, people who had syphilis for 20, 30 years, all you had to do was give them the regular treatment and it was gone.
Yep. And I don't know how long they had it because you never know. But the treatment for there's a treatment for the third stage of syphilis, yes.
I mean, that just sounds very painful, Doc. I live not far from the STD clinic here in West Baltimore, and it just paints a very uncomfortable, painful, hateful, racially charged picture.
Well, the process is that whole process from the primary syphilis all the way to tertiary syphilis is easily diagnosed with a test, and it's easily treated along the way, anywhere along that way. And so that was
I can't believe,
the fact that they withheld treatment was really the significant issue.
Doc, that's just cruddy. Doc, you from North Carolina. You know, I don't know where you plan to go in this interview, but you done got me started. Now you done made me think of the sterilizations that took place in North Carolina.
And they were mostly in South Carolina. That was South Carolina. And, yeah, I mean, there have been all kinds of things that have happened during the course.
They call it medical apartheid.
Right. Well, there's a lot of things that happen during the course of my career and the career in medicine. And that's one of the reasons why this school at the site at Morgan is so important, because when you have people that look like you and lived in your neighborhood and have finally got through medical school, you now have your advocate. And I think that that's what we should do as physicians, is be advocate for the patient. So, yeah, you're right. There have been all kind of travesties that you can just keep. I think there's so many that we can just keep naming. And one of the reasons that I was in medical school is a travesty of scarcity of physicians. There was no underrepresented minority physicians until I got in high school. I thought that I just thought it was unconscionable to that you can't have somebody that looks like me that was a physician, and that's what I tried to do.
Doc, let's get to the meat of the issue. You are planning a College of Osteopathy Medicine for Morgan State University. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we have a proposed College of Osteopathic Medicine, and it's going to be at Morgan State. And the site is going to be, if you remember, you say you got a couple of degrees from Morgan, the old Montebello building.
I would not say that. I should, but I won't say it. I have some years at Morgan. Yes, undergrad and grad. I put in time. I did not stand on the bridge.
If you put in time, then we're going to say you're a Morganite. But it's going to, if you know Morgan, you know where the old Montebello building is.
Absolutely.
It used to be a hospital.
Absolutely.
Our plans is to raise that building and place in its place a 4-story, 130,000 square foot medical building for the medical school. In that building, we will then start teaching. And the reason why I think it's so important to be at that site is because as those white jackets walk out of that building onto that campus, the other 9,000 students there realize that there is an opportunity to be a physician. And it gives me chills to understand that that is, if you see it, you can believe it. I just feel that we have stopped dreaming because of all of the hardships we've gone through, and you talked about a lot of that in the preview of your show. We have gone through a lot of things. Why are we going to have to keep doing that when we can really start dreaming? We can dream about being a doctor. We can dream about getting into the upper class, or just we can just improve ourselves. Wherever medical schools are developed, usually the community there profits from that development.
So, Dr. Sealey, I don't know how much of a history buff you are, but I'm just going to put it out there. Nicole sent you here, so you must be able to handle it. Okay. Is there going to be a Dr. Vivian Thomas wing to the Morgan State School of Medicine?
Well, you know what, and I'm interested, Donnie, is that we feel that having people names as a part of the school, not just her, but
Vivian, that was the guy Most Def played. Something the Lord made. He cured blue baby disease with Dr. David Blaylock. They did a movie about him on HBO.
Yeah, right.
And I don't know how well he got treated once he went to college and stuff, but he trained Hopkins doctors.
Doctors, yeah. I remember that in cardiothoracic surgery, but we are going to be naming, I think that's one name that we're going to put there, and I think it's going to be very, very important. But we want to place names there throughout. We want to have many of our labs and stuff will have names of very, very important people, because the students need to look at that. They need to look at the history. You know, if you don't see your history, you have a tendency to repeat some bad parts of it. We don't want to do that. So I agree with you. It's important.
You know, Doc, that when I think of medicine, just here in this area, this region, not just Baltimore. I know over at Coppin, they had Dr. Percy Julian. There were so many African Americans. I think of those women in Hidden Figures. You know, this show right here is on the STEM platform, STEM City USA, with Dr. Tyrone Taborn in the metaverse. All of that to say, we have been heavily involved in science. My dad was a funeral director, so I grew up above a morgue. I done seen more dead bodies by the age of 5 than most see in a lifetime. But we have always been around STEM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math, and almost deterred from going into fields like medicine. There's this overarching American stigma that refuses to recognize, I won't say Black supremacy, but we certainly don't believe in anybody else's supremacy. So how do you do this in a racially charged America? This country is still sick. Look at Trump. I hope you get to operate on him. He needs a new head.
Well, let's talk about this. And I said that a little bit earlier. Our intent is to start in the elementary schools and have our students going to the schools in Baltimore and surrounding areas and talk about being a doctor. And we call that future doctors. Future doctors.
I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that marketing campaign.
Okay, well,
because I meet too many young people who all they know, the only way they know that they've seen money is selling coke, heroin, and crack. There's some who don't know that you can make a living doing something constructive.
Well, and that's the whole purpose of getting there early on, so that you can change their trajectory. You can control their trajectory. You can control the whole process there. So you can be there, and you kind of mentor these kids. We'll have our students mentoring, and our professors mentoring those kids all the way through elementary school into high school and into college. The second thing that we will do is what we call mini medical school, and that's in their high school years, their 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, not the 12th grade. We will bring them to the campus and let them see what it seems to be a physician. Because, you know,
I want to be a part of that. I do not understand how we have a beautiful Morgan State University that goes back to the 1800s, and so many of our young people have not been to Morgan. I'm all for new buildings and all of that. The same with Coppin. I'm happy for CIAA. But if our young people are not a part of this experience, we've missed the mark.
Well, we are going to make sure that our pipelines. One of the reasons why I think that Morgan State is so important, it dates back 150 years, is because of the pipeline. There is an opportunity for people at Morgan, and we're going to have programs with them that if you can spend 3 years at Morgan and 4 years with us, you can get your medical degree. But I think that what is important is that pipeline, that those kids at Morgan realizing that they can go to medical school and be a part of that class and come out and be a qualified physician. Because, you know, one thing that we have to do in a medical school is we got to protect the public. So we're not going to put out a second-rate doctor. Our doctors are going to be first-rate, just like any other physician.
I got one request, though, with that, Doc. They have to understand the give back. Somewhere in your career, your grandmama, your big auntie, your pop, your grandfather sets you down and explain that you, Dr. John Wesley Sealey, before you were a doctor, that you have an obligation, because to whom much is given, much is required. How do you deal with this sense of privilege within the Black community? I mean, it's almost like you can't even ask them to clean up their room these days. And yes, I said they.
Well, I think that, you know, what that's it's like right now, and I use this metaphor. We want the kids to stop living this nightmare, and that's because you look at television, you look at everything else, you see that, and start dreaming again. Because in order to do that, you have to dream. You have to be a dreamer, and I think it's so important that we look at that whole process. And if you train your doctors in the neighborhoods, if you get them familiar with what the population health of a neighborhood, that is, where you live has a lot to do with the diseases that you have, I think they'll give back. That's where they're going to want to practice it. But you can't leave them, you can't train them in the suburbs and then expect them to be sensitive to.
Well, see, you just made the case for me, Doc, when I think with all due respect, when I think of, we talking about Baltimore, so I should be able to be 100% honest with you. When you think of segregation, right now we're dealing with segregation here in the city of Baltimore. Not far from Morgan State University is Morgan Park, founded by a Black person. There's Wilson Park, founded by Harry O. Wilson. And there's also Hose Heights in between Roland Park and Hamden. There was a fourth Black community in Cross Keys. Right now, the Blacks in Hose Heights are being discriminated against by the wealthier, richer white folks in Roland Park. Now, how did I get on this topic? If we don't level the playing field and teach our children their obligation, we're going to repeat this same madness. And let me just say this. This discrimination is currently in play in Hose Heights. This is a Black community founded in 1835 by a freed African-American, Grandison Ho. The struggle never stops. We need freedom fighters who are doctors.
Well, what happens if you take a young man from Hogan Heights?
Hose Heights. It's like the term H-O-E. Yeah, Hose Heights. It's not a bad word.
You convince some of those students to go to medical school. You follow them through, and they go back. That's the only way they're going to come back. I'm a strong advocate of that.
There was a Dr. Marcus Asante that we brought on the show. I must link you with him. He has a program that he mentors medical students. He teaches them terminology, how to pass tests, strategies. I mean, as a doctor, you have to learn every bone in the body. You have to know all of the organs, how all of this stuff works together. How do we get already established physicians to be a part of this new school of medicine?
Well, I think that a lot of them have. A lot of them have. Once you say the name Morgan and you associate with Morgan, and we are on the campus of Morgan, I think that people do become very sensitive to it. They know exactly what we want. They know our mission is to help underrepresented minorities become physicians, not only primary care physicians, but specialists, which we really need. I think that the medical community has in Maryland has come out and helped us, and they are trying to say, "I will teach your kids. I will do all those kind of things." I think that's going to be very good. I think that once we get them in medical school, to get those that we get in medical school motivated to completion and be 100% great doctors is going to be fine. I'm interested in that sixth grader right now that's sitting over there in the school, in that community, that wants to be a doctor, but all he sees is all of the things that he sees on television, and all you hear is people saying, oh, it's too hard, it's too expensive, it's too this. I think that I would like to wrap my arms around those kids, shepherd them through that. So it's going to be a long-term process. It's not going to happen overnight. Shepherd them through that process and get them into medical school. I want them that he can be in the 6th grade, go to high school in Maryland, go to college at Morgan or someplace in Maryland, do his medical school in Maryland, do his residency in Maryland. And where do you think he's going to practice at?
All right, for all of that, we gonna beat him up if he leaves Maryland. Okay.
Well, I mean, he will not leave Maryland because mother, daddy, uncle, they still in the African American community, physicians have this. They are most time looked at with a significant amount of pride. Although the African American community is afraid of physicians a little bit, and I understand why for some of the history that
We're
has
scared
gone
of dentists even more so.
on. Yeah.
I didn't know dentists committed suicide so much.
Well, that has been an issue not only in dentistry but also in medicine, where a lot.
After you done went to school all of them years, took out all them loans, you gonna go whack yourself? You better enjoy your life.
Well, you understand that happens. There's a lot of pressure when you go through medical school. Medical school that's the whole point. That's why I think it's very important to have support mechanisms early on.
I agree. So when I first started, so you put me on the spot. I started at Morehouse, and after being indoctrinated at Morehouse for the first 2 years of my academic career, you already know what I think. But when I got to Morehouse, I had only heard of Meharry. But since then, and it was, I guess, 10 years, from 93 maybe, I remember them building Morehouse Medical School. I remember the beginning. I remember before there was no building, and now there's a building.
How many years ago was that? 40?
93, 30,
40,
30, almost 40 years, yes.
45. So that's the whole point. The medical school, the proposed medical school at Morgan is the first HBCU in 45 years.
Wow.
So that's what I'm talking about.
That's some presidential White House stuff.
I don't know what it is. I know that we, as a part of the school, have to just work hard to make sure that this is a reality.
You got to go talk to Kamala Harris.
We need this so badly.
You got to go and talk to Kamala Harris, the vice president.
Oh, well, I will talk to anybody to get this to happen, because I'm committed with 100% of myself to make sure that this happens.
Have you reached out to her?
No, we've been busy doing the accreditation for the school right now. So we haven't really reached out to her or tried to do that. I think that's the one thing that we're doing accreditation, making sure it's all right, and making sure that everything is perfect. So the school, I guess I should tell you a little bit about where we're going with the school. Probably shouldn't I? Know.
What's wrong? You just fine. Why are you moving around? I'm doing surgery right here, and you moved.
I moved around because I saw that my power might be a little bit low, and if that would happen, I did not want to miss anything. So the school we plan to take our first student in August 2024.
Really? You already have a date?
You have a date.
Oh, well, okay. What time? I want to be there to take pictures.
All right, you'll be there.
I want to videotape. This is history.
You'll be there.
I'm a little confused. Is the medical school a go?
The medical school is still being accredited. We are in the process of, yes, it isn't being accredited. It is still the proposed school as it goes through the accreditation. It's at the second level of accreditation right now.
Second of how many?
Of 4.
Okay, so we're almost halfway there.
We are almost, well, their process is that the the last stage of accreditation is after the first students graduate. Then you can be accredited. You can have the students in there doing pre-accreditation, and that is 4 years before that class graduates. So we will go through the process of getting accredited and go from a proposed school to a candidate school to a pre-accreditation. At pre-accreditation, that's when we can start taking students in, if everything goes as well as we have planned it to go. Okay. But we have already planned to do that. We plan to have approximately 150 to 180 students each year, which is going to be a pretty good number of students. We will be accepting kids that are very, very smart, and we will hope that we will have a lot of underrepresented minorities there. We're hoping that's what we want to. We're not shooting for a school that is totally urban or totally underrepresented. We just want them to be able to have a shot at it.
Okay, why osteopathy?
Because I'm an osteopathic physician.
Okay, what is an osteopathy?
Okay, the one thing, the difference between an osteopathic physician and an allopathic physician, which is a traditional MD, is that we as an osteopathic physician learn to touch the body and be able to realign and diagnose with our hands a lot. That's one of the things. We take a significant number of classes that help us. We take the same classes that any allopathic physician does, but we also take that class. We call it manual manipulation, where we learn to do some of the same things that a chiropractor does, but we also learn to diagnose with our hands. So I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon that's an osteopathic physician. So I use the same tools that anybody else, but I do have a tendency to have touched patients, and usually people will say I'm very personal because I do that.
Now, you just threw some big words out at us, and I'm going to need you to go back and help us with our vocabulary.
All right, then what is it that you want me to help you with? I will surely do that for you.
Well, damn. Okay. So from Morgan's School of Osteopathy, they can go from there into any specialty?
Yes. So what happens is there are different schools of medicine: allopathic schools of medicine, which is a traditional MD, and osteopathic. They go into the same residencies. After they take the same kind of licensing exams to make sure they protect the public. But after you finish the medical school, then you can go to any residency that you want to go to, and they all go to the same residencies. It's the same. It's called the single accreditation system.
Doc, I was thinking back to, and this is before your tenure in Baltimore, where Black people could go for services. I was born in Providence Hospital.
Yeah.
It was a little small building then on Division Street. But it brings to mind so much medical history associated with the city. Now, I already mentioned Vivian Thomas, who worked with Dr. David Blaylock and trained those Hopkins doctors. But also what comes to mind, in addition to medical apartheid, is Henrietta Lacks. At Johns Hopkins, they took her cells. They said they didn't steal it because there wasn't no law against them taking somebody's cells. But we know they took her cells and they made billions of dollars off of her. What is the significance of having a medical school in Baltimore, the home of segregation?
What is the significance? Because if you have, you go all the way back. I get calls, and I'm just going to regress just a minute. I get calls not just from Baltimore and Maryland. I get calls from across the country. You understand? And when you talk about segregation, Johns Hopkins is number 3 medical school or number 2 medical school in the country. University of Maryland is very high as a great medical school. We're not saying that we are going to compete against them, because there are a significant number of underrepresented minorities in that segregated group that want to go to medical school. Each year, approximately 350 to 400 students leave Maryland to go to some other place to get into medical school, to go to medical school. If you look at I just think that we want underrepresented minority to have a first shot at the table.
Well, it looks like, I don't know if you saw the debate last night, you may have some surgery to do because Dan Cox can't find his head or his arm or any other part of his body after he went into that Westmore firestorm. But maybe some of these elected officials can be of help. I mean, you know, Kwesi Mfume, Congressman Sarbanes, Senator Cardin, pull them on the carpet. Tell them we need that money. Do you need money?
We always need money. I don't want to sit here and talk about the need for money because that usually will distort things. We need the medical school more than we need money. We need the medical school. That we need. So we have engaged with significant number of politicians who have all been very, 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 very supportive of this endeavor.
We expect that of them. We train them well, and they know that if they don't do that, we will replace them.
Well, I mean, I have not had any politician that has not said that this is not a good thing to do.
They don't want to mess with Morgan. They understand the ramifications. Morgan State is a big family.
Yeah.
I mean, and we have wonderful means. I mean, you think of the new journalism school. You think of what Dean DeLoach has done with the engineering school, and now medicine. I'm fascinated. I have to ask you, what role, if any, will the School of Engineering play in this new facility? Certainly, you can't have some of the best engineers in the world and they don't they don't touch.
There you go. I think that the thing that I look at it is, one thing is research and proving the whole process of motion and how touch it. They have all of the equipment and all of the things to make sure that you can do research. Second thing is, which is a little quiet, is some of the best physicians were engineers. So they have the opportunity to go to medical school.
You can't just throw that out there, Dr. Sealey. Give me one. One engineer that transferred to a doctor.
It's not transfer. You remember this, engineering is your undergrad. That wasn't a transfer. That was an engineer who is a doctor. You understand?
Oh, well, I will never make that mistake again.
I'm just saying to you, it's like you spend your time being an engineer. Now, what do? Engineers are people that deal with time management. They deal with things and trying to be the most efficient with it. Can you think about that? I mean, an engineer can be a physician, can be a surgeon, can be anything. Wow. Cardiology is all about electrical engineering. So how about an engineer that goes to Morgan undergrad and then he decides to go to medical school, decide to go on to be a cardiologist? He's got some ideas.
Scientists and inventors.
We want to be the very best, and we have to be the very best.
Okay. Any final thoughts? What can we do? What can the general public do to support Morgan State University's proposed School of Medicine?
I think that the most important thing is the knowledge and controlling the narrative, and keep asking where is it, how is it doing, and all those kind of things, and we'll give you the answers. Because we know that at some time or another there will be some roadblocks. If there are, we just have to be able to get over those barriers, and that's what we need to do. And I think with the support of the community, we're going to get over a lot of barriers. I mean, I have felt really supported since I've been here. I've been here a little bit over a year, and I can tell you that, as I mentioned this, it's great with the school.
Dr. Sealey, I want to tell you what I am particularly pleased. I'm glad to see a Black man from America in your position. And I say that because when I think of HBCUs, the historically black colleges and universities, and what they represent, I understand other people's plight, but I'm interested in my community and the development, the evolution of my community, people that look like me and you. And we also know that others are coming to our campuses now. I don't want us to get lost in the sauce.
Well, I understand that.
I like homegrown. I'm sorry,
but I think that's the
North Carolina's homegrown.
Well, that's the whole point, I think, Donnie, that I talk about us getting out in the community and letting everybody in the community know that you can come there and you can be a doctor. I think it's very important because you still got to get the grades. You still got to take the entrance exam. You still got to do all those things. But we can tell you that, okay, it's all about concentration. It's not about you cannot do it, right? The worst thing that I hear people say all the time is that we don't have enough qualified people going to school. No, that's not true. We don't have people that know how to have opportunity. You understand?
So you never told me who put it in you, grandmama, big mama, big papa?
I would have to blame my mother, and I can tell you this: just imagine rural North Carolina, very poor area, and your mother is saying to you every day, your hands are too small to be a farmer. Whatever you do, just do the very best you can do. Even if you be a janitor, be the very best you can do. And with that also, I'm sorry. I also say that the churches are very, very important. And, I mean, they're important to me because that kept me out of trouble. That kept me focused. So my mother is who would be the one that I would tell you that probably put it all in me.
She must be proud.
She was and probably is still very, very proud. Yep. She loved her.
Because
son.
I don't think you stopped at no janitor. That might have been your summer job one summer.
No, she would. No, that was, she would. It was so interesting, Donnie, because she would come up to my high school probably every other week to make sure.
Oh, she spot checked you. You got spot checked.
Spot checker. And
I got spot checked.
I remember when I went to college, my mother drove me to college, and I remember her coming up probably every month with the goodie bags.
A care package.
And everybody, care package. Everybody in the dormitory going, "Oh wow!" And those things really go a long way.
Man, I remember them care packages. I wonder how my mama sent me sirloin steaks from Baltimore to Atlanta and all of that heat, and they stayed frozen. My mother was a genius.
All right, that's what I'm talking about. So you understand what I'm saying.
When the care packages come, you everybody's friend.
Yeah. I think that's just very, very important. And so we are now trying to get the word out, making sure that everybody understands what the school is going to do, trying to make sure that they are getting prepared. You got to get prepared for this. And like you say, pushing in the state of Maryland, actually, and to consider medicine. And I think if you do that, you can do it.
Good deal. Doctor, we appreciate you taking time out. Was there anything else that we need to cover before we close out?
I don't know. I just think that as we move along, I will definitely talk and try to get back in contact with you and let you know what our steps are and how we're moving along that process.
Well, I want to be a part of the PR, making sure we're on WEAA, where we educate African Americans. I will mention it on the show tonight with Mike Nice on Hip Hop Chronicles. There's also Morgan's press and PR department. They put out a lot of good news.
Yeah. We do have a lot of contact with them. Yes.
Good deal. Dr.
If
Sealey,
you have any questions, you just get a hold of me and I can shoot some more answers to you, okay?
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and allowing us to interview. I got a question. Right there where you put your name, why didn't you put Dr. John? Why didn't you put doctor in there? Are you that modest? Are you that humble?
I think so. I don't think that. I don't think that I am, my mission is to help. I just happen to be a physician. I mean, it's not, I don't walk around with that badge of honor on my chest or anything. I'm just a person that has worked hard, gone through a lot of those things to get to
But
that
why
degree.
do you care? You look, let's be honest. You said that being a doctor could lead you to a different lifestyle, upper class. Why do you care? That's why I'm asking you about your mama and your training, because so many of us, we get to that level and we forget. I thanked you for being an African American educator who actually cares about African American students, because quite often we get into that position, and rather than pulling people along and uplifting the mission of the historically Black colleges and universities, and I know you got Black professors that say, I got mine and you got yours to get.
Okay, as when I was growing up, the village was important. You didn't have sugar, you borrowed it from your neighbor. And and people did try to work and do things, but I think that now we have a whole group of people that, especially when I went to get my cardiothoracic training, my instructor, my trainer said that I had to be 10 times better than anybody else to get through there because of that whole process. I don't think you have to be told that. I want to be a bridge. I have been trying to help students all my life, as I have gone through medicine, because I want to be a bridge. I don't think that I have always committed myself to come back and help those unfortunate. And I think that day that I was in my doctor's office, I realized as a youngster, the whole issue of segregation means that there is a barrier there. And I want to break that barrier and take that barrier away, to be honest with you.
Well, we appreciate that. I just want to tell you that my grandmama was talking about Johns Hopkins in 1950. She said, don't go there and don't be found drunk on the streets in East Baltimore, because you're going to be in an experiment cage by lunchtime. So there's a lot that we're fighting, a lot of stigmas that we're fighting against, but they're only reinforced by some of the treatment. When I saw those immigrants from Haiti being whipped by men on horseback, while Ukrainian refugees were given $40 and $50 billion and airlifted, I see that there's some serious disparity in this country, and it hasn't stopped. And the only way it stops is when we address it.
Yep, and we're going to try to address it.
Thank you, Dr. Sealey. Have a beautiful day. Thank you again to Nicole.
Okay.
Have a good day, Baltimore. Good morning, world.